Hello everyone, welcome to the next stream. And the main topic of this stream is how the blur effect was updated and how it will be updated in the future, and some minor changes to the effect panel. So let's jump right to it. This will probably be the next icon of the blur effect. If anyone has a better idea, you can suggest a better icon, but this seems like a wavy rectangle. When your vision is blurred, you don't see straight lines, so this seems appropriate. So let's apply the blur effect to this icon, and you can see that the user interface is slightly different than in the previous version. The first setting is the direction of the blur. This first one is the default blur. That means that the image is blurred in both vertical and horizontal directions. You can choose to only blur in one of the direction, and these two settings are kind of weird. But this one rotates the image, and this one zooms it in, like in and out. These are very different from the standard blurs, and this all will be updated in the future. So this controls the direction. The second parameter is the amount of the blur. How many pixels are influenced by each pixel. You now have a slider to make it easier. You don't have to type the numbers into the edit box as before. And this is a new setting that was not in the previous version. In the previous version, these two settings were merged, and you actually had two ways how to do this horizontal and vertical blur. And let me show you maybe the old version so we can compare it. Let's see, for example, this image. So in the old version, you can see that you had Gaussian blur, box blur, then vertical and horizontal, and the two special blurs. And in the new version, you don't have the box and Gaussian blur in this selection, but you have them hidden, or you have them in this other. This first one is the box blur from the previous version. It works like this. Maybe I can draw it for you. So let's create a new image and imagine that these are pixels. They should probably be the same. So when you do a blur, you take one pixel and you do something like this with it. So imagine that this pixel gets transformed, maybe not into this, but into a rectangle that is only partially transparent. It's not as opaque as the original pixel. And if we do this for every pixel, it will look like this. And this is how the box blur works approximately. The Gaussian blur works slightly differently. Instead of creating these boxes, it creates a Gaussian curve. It looks something like this. Well, that was not very nice. Maybe let me try again. Maybe using this method, it looks like this. And the height here represents the opacity at that point. So it's impossible to draw it like this semi-transparent box, but imagine that it maybe I will try to do it with a box. It transfers each pixel into something like this. Maybe add some more points to the gradient. So this is how the Gaussian blur modifies the pixels. Hello, we have another viewer. Hello. So this is how the Gaussian blur works, and of course I have to copy this for each pixel, so it's slightly nicer. And we have a third option here. This is a linear spreading of the pixel, and in that case the pixel is transformed into a triangle. So you get something like this. So it's something between the box blur and the Gaussian blur. Okay. If there are questions regarding how the blur works, you can ask them, of course. So you can control the direction here, and you can, for each direction, only for these three ones, you can select how to spread the pixels around. What needs to be done is support for not for fractional values here, because right now the amount of how much you want to blur is rounded to whole numbers. Can I make it look like I am shaking the object? I don't know what you mean by that question. If you mean if you do something like apply these different blurs quickly in a sequence, for example in an animation or something like that. Anyway, there is one more setting in the new blur, and This one controls what happens at the edges of the canvas. Maybe it will be more useful if I show you this on a classic image, normal image. Let's do blur. So if I do not enable this checkbox, then the color that is outside of the canvas will be spread into the canvas, because that is how the blur works. The color that was here in the corner, the pixel gets spread around some of its ends above the canvas, some to the left, and the same applies to a pixel that is outside the canvas. It gets spread into the canvas, and this color that gets spread into the canvas can be controlled by these settings. This is the default color for that layer that controls what color is outside of the canvas. So if you want the classic behavior of the blur, if you want to blur a photo, then you enable edge replication, and then the blur works as if the pixels that are at the edge were actually above the canvas into infinity. How did you get a photo of my invention? No, I downloaded this photo from the internet to use for my experiments. This is a sample photo. It has 12.5 megapixels, so it's of reasonable size. I am using it for speed testing. So in this new version, the blur should be much faster than in the old one, and also the speed, the performance monitoring should work also much better. So you can see here how much time it took to apply the blur. On my computer it takes about 200 milliseconds, and actually I did some experiments, and it seems to be useful to use one less score than your maximum, because the program also needs to do other things than just apply this blur effect, and it usually performs better. You can see it performed about 10% better than when all the cores were enabled. So maybe if you want maximum performance, do what I just did. Maybe I will do that the default in the future. Set here one less, the value should be one less than the number of cores. When will these updates be pushed? Yes, these updates are available right now, and you can download them as usual. They are only available for RWPaint right now. You can download them via this link, the last one. So one more thing that was changed in this build, on the website it says the standard download link is still the old stable 2013 version, but this small link here, the last one, is the newest version. Other application also have this small link, but for the icon editor, the cursor editor, these are about 2 months old, because some of these latest changes are not very stable. There can be random crashes and so on. Okay, one more thing. When you are modifying the layer that has a layer style that has a blur applied, then you may find that it is much faster for the linear or constant spread, because the Gaussian spread means that the spreading radius is actually infinite, and it always has to recompute the whole canvas. The other things I wanted to talk about is the changes you can see here and here. In the older version, there was just the configuration panel of the current effect, and in the new version you have the name so that you know what you are doing. Here is a help button, but it doesn't work right now. It opens the website, but the correct pages are not yet created. It will be redirected to the correct right pages later. And you can see these two buttons here. You can quickly remove this effect, and the other button that doesn't actually do anything. It seems like it doesn't do anything. It just selects this layer. So this way, when you let me remove it, but when I go to style and add an effect, and then say click on done, I can continue editing. So it works similarly as a normal similarly as in the previous version, when you applied not a layer style but a normal effect. So for example, in the old version, or also in the new version, when you click on effects and blur, you will see this modal dialog. When you click OK, it applies the effect. And for the layer styles, some people were quite confused because they didn't know what happened. Some people were confused that they do not have the edit tools in the toolbar anymore, and it seems like nothing is working when they clicked on the canvas. So it should now be easier for them to click the done button and all the drawing tools are back. And you can see here there is a small problem with the incorrect color for the invalid handling of this default color when you have this layer selected. It will be fixed later. Anyway, this button doesn't work yet, but you will be able to. It will work similarly as, for example, as this button worked in the old version. You will see a couple of predefined values. These are not actually predefined, these are configurations you have used recently, and you can quickly swap between them, and similar functionality will be available here via this button. You will probably also be able to export and import settings from a file. I am also considering a button that will actually apply the current effect and all the underlying effect to the layer. But I'm not sure whether it should be here in this panel or whether it should be, for example, in a context menu here, or whether this merge button should actually do this when a layer style is selected. We will see. So I think these are all the new changes that are visible. I did some, actually doing this required a rather big redesign, because I am now able to, because when I click done, it does not just, it seems like it does nothing, but it actually changes the selection here. And previously this part of the window didn't have the ability to influence the selection of the in this layer window. So now it is possible. So if there are any questions, please ask them right now. You can also, of course, ask anything related to any real-world software or the website. This is the right moment. I am also considering this icon, for example, to be used for the blur effect. Maybe instead this pillow-like icon. Maybe it will be only visible here when you select this radial blur. I can already see that this slider is not working properly with the radial blur. Also, one more thing, I'm kinda undecided whether to continue changing the icons from the old style, this 3D style, to the currently more dominating 2D drawing style. Like I have a new icon for blur instead of the old one. The old one looked like this. And so what's your opinion? Should I continue converting the icons to the new style? This is a new style icon. The projected shadow is a new style icon. The blur uses the new style. Symmetry and all the others are still using the 3D shaded style. And of course all these icons are also using the new style. the help icon looks not very good. And you can see that I tried to make the panel similar to this tool properties panel, and here you can see the old 3D icon. It looks better in my opinion. So what I plan to do next, it looks like supporting these vector styles will be very difficult without a big redesign. So I'm not sure whether this will stay in the final version. Eventually it will make its way there, but I also want the stable version to be available as soon as possible. And if I keep adding new and new things, it will never be complete. Also, one more thing what I'm considering. So let me create a new layer, and you can notice that I have some of the tools that were only available in the raster editor. They are now also available in the vector editor. And I have this brush tool here. It doesn't work 100%, but wouldn't it be nice if you could use like a picture brush in a vector layer? If you do something like this, and you can then select a different color. Each brush stroke can be at least partially modified after you have made it, and you can then also delete these. So maybe that will be added. It's quite slow in the current version and not entirely stable. So let me know in the comments whether you think it will be worth the time to add brush support to the vector. So you will be able to use brush in a vector layer. The same applies to the pencil tool. It doesn't work very well, but maybe if it is updated to work correctly within a vector layer, it will make the real-world paint quite useful for pixel artists. Because similarly as with the brush, the good thing about this is that you can change the properties of the brush, at least some of them, after you have after you have painted with the brush. In a classic raster editor, once you do something with the brush, you cannot modify it in any way. But in a vector layer, you should be able to recolor, and you should be able to change the size. It may not work in the current version because this is just for testing. You may be able to change the pattern, maybe. It doesn't work, but maybe it will. So, if there are no questions, then I will end this stream and I will see you again in 3 weeks. Hopefully with some more changes, some more features, some more fixes. We will see. So let's wait 10 seconds and then I will end the stream and get something to eat. So it seems like there are no questions. So have a nice day and see you in 3 weeks. Goodbye.